DNA reveals what killed Napoleon's soldiers during the disastrous retreat from Russia in 1812. A mass grave containing soldiers from Napoleon Bonaparte's French army is revealing some of the diseases that killed soldiers during the Grande Army's disastrous retreat from Russia in 1812. Napoleon Bonaparte's massive army, known as the Grande Armée, was nearly wiped out by starvation, enemy attacks, and a harsh winter during the ill-fated 1812 invasion of Russia. But scientists have now identified two other deadly factors that brought the French army to its knees: two previously unsuspected diseases. Researchers already believed infectious diseases played a role in the French army's demise, with typhus and trench fever long thought to have killed thousands of French soldiers. But a new analysis of a mass grave in Lithuania containing the skeletons of French soldiers has found no trace of the bacteria that caused these diseases. Instead, researchers found evidence of two entirely different diseases: Salmonella enterica and Borrelia recurrentis. This finding adds a new link to the centuries-long debate about the devastation suffered by the army. Napoleon began his Russian campaign with approximately 600,000 soldiers. However, fewer than 50,000 survived. Historians suspected that during months of retreat, freezing cold and starvation led to an epidemic caused by the typhus bacteria, Rickettsia prowazekii, dysentery, which can be triggered by several different microbes, and trench fever caused by Bartonella quintana. However, a new study published in the journal Current Biology suggests that these soldiers may have been weakened by fevers caused by Borrelia recurrentis, and then killed by paratyphoid, a disease unrelated to typhus, caused by Salmonella enterica and transmitted through contaminated food and water. Our research provides the first direct evidence that paratyphoid fever contributed to deaths during Napoleon's army's disastrous retreat from Russia, the researchers write in their paper. Napoleonic-era teeth. The new study examined DNA from the teeth of 13 French soldiers buried in a mass grave in Vilnius, Lithuania, during the retreat. The grave was discovered during construction in 2001. The researchers found no traces of bacteria that cause typhus or trench fever. However, they did find genetic traces of Salmonella enterica and Borrelia recurrentis. Remnants of body lice were found on the soldiers in the grave, suggesting they may have been infected with Rickettsia prowazekii, the parasite that causes typhus. However, according to the researchers, the lice were primarily transmitting Borrelia recurrentis to the soldiers. This bacterium causes recurrent fever, a fever that seems to subside after a few days but then returns. Researchers emphasize that their findings do not rule out the presence of other diseases that contributed to the soldiers' deaths. Given the extreme and harsh conditions that characterized this retreat, the presence of multiple overlapping infections is highly probable. A plausible scenario for the soldiers' deaths is a combination of several diseases, including fatigue, cold, and paratyphoid fever, as well as recurrent fevers transmitted by lice. The retreat from Moscow. Napoleon's retreat from Moscow is considered one of the worst military disasters in history. The Grande Armée entered the city on September 14, 1812, hoping that Tsar Alexander I would negotiate peace. However, the Russians had set the city ablaze and left no food behind, forcing the French to retreat a few weeks later, meaning the army had to cover approximately 1,300 kilometers on foot as the harsh Russian winter was about to begin. Temperatures in Moscow winters are typically well below freezing, dropping as low as -27 degrees Celsius. Survivors recounted how starving soldiers marched with little protection in tattered uniforms under a blinding blizzard. Eventually, the only edible things became horses, dogs, and tree bark. Many soldiers froze to death after collapsing from exhaustion. Carles Louisa Fox, a geneticist at the Institute of Biology and Evolution at Pompeu Fabra University in Barcelona, who was not involved in the new research, had examined traces of Salmonella enterica in the remains of Spanish soldiers who died in 1652. Louisa Fox says, "The research highlights how the history of past pathogens and epidemics is inextricably linked to military history, past migrations, and colonization processes. In the past, it was likely that more soldiers died from disease than from fighting." Louisa Fox adds that biology and archaeology have added new details to our understanding of many historical events. Epidemics had an impact not only on mortality but also on social, political, and even cultural aspects. And perhaps the most terrifying thing is this. This story isn't just an event from the past. Human history has shown us the same thing time and again. When power, ambition, and fear come together, even the greatest cities can be destroyed in a few days. The civilizations that stand today are built upon what was once thought indestructible. And who knows? Perhaps even the world we live in now will be remembered in the future only as a ruin, a legend, a warning. History records not only the winners but also the vanished. And sometimes, the greatest lessons come from the greatest destruction. If you are interested in such true stories, remember, each video is actually a door to the past. And behind that door, there are countless secrets waiting to be discovered. Don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel. Because there are many more stories to tell, and some are much darker than what you've heard.